only PVH. And PVH causes dyspnea by stimulation of J receptors, that is true. But a lot of cardiac disorders have dyspnea because of many other things also. So what is your answer to dyspnea in PH? Dyspnea in PH could occur from many things, either from mechanoreceptors in the lungs. The other answer that many times students give is that the cardiac output is reduced, so skeletal muscles suffer from decreased cardiac output. But you see, many patients of PH are very dyspneic even when they are class 2. So that means cardiac output is not very low. So all in all, dyspnea in PH is not simply worked out. It is not simply a matter of J receptors. It is also pre-capillary. It could be because of a slight hypoxia from a right to left AST shunt. It could be because, so functionally, body looks at dyspnea from various mechanisms. By ventilation, efferents from skeletal muscles, efferents within the lungs, emotional and central. So any of this could cause dyspnea. How do we measure dyspnea? You see, we have patient talk, we say dyspnea in all, but broadly speaking, dyspnea is talked in 3 different terms. Patient have difficulty in breathing takes effort. Patient takes more time or more effort for breathing, or they feel tightness in constriction, or they feel air hunger. Now, can we diagnose different diseases based on these different symptoms? Probably we can, but we have not looked into this very seriously. And I suggest that you read dyspnea in detail, because there are very few symptoms in cardiology. How do we measure dyspnea? We talk of NYHA class, but dyspnea measurements are done on very many scales, like Borg index, like visual analog scale, modified MRC scales, etc., etc., etc. So we should have some idea of how dyspnea is measured in terms of objectively analyzing it. Okay. Similarly, what is the cause of angina in PH? PH angina obviously is because of right ventricular demand supply. Also remember sometimes, and this I'm sure you know, left main compression by dilated pulmonary artery can cause angina, and that could be reversible sometimes. Syncope is very interesting in PH. Syncope and pre-syncope are signs of fixed cardiac output and severe PH. What is the cause of hemoptysis in PH? Have you ever wondered that hemoptysis in PH and hemoptysis in tetralogy are because of similar things? When the vessels get occluded, the collaterals form from aorta, and they often tend to bleed. Sometimes hemoptysis in PH can be messy from dissection of the pulmonary artery, and that could be fatal. So hemoptysis could be a problem. What is the hoarseness in PH? Hoarseness is because of recurrent laryngeal paralysis by PAH. And do you think it can tell the cause of PH? Yes. Hoarseness is much more common in IPH or in PH with PDA. It doesn't seem to happen with PH in Eisenmenger VSTs, or it doesn't happen with other AST Eisenmengers. At the clinical level, bedside, can you tell me it is the recurrent laryngeal palsy? Yes, this could be a problem. What is the hoarseness in PH? Hoarseness is because of recurrent laryngeal paralysis by PAH. And do you think it can tell the cause of PH? Yes, hoarseness is much more common in IPH or in PH with PDA. It doesn't seem to happen with PH in Eisenmenger VSTs, or it doesn't happen with other AST Eisenmengers. At the clinical level, bedside, can you tell me it is the recurrent laryngeal palsy? Yes. If the patient coughs and he has the bovine type of cough, you can hazard a guess that yes, this looks like recurrent laryngeal palsy. Can PH cause bendopnea? You know, this is a new term, fancy term, and it has been equated, it has been brought out in patients with heart failure. One study has also said that IPH patients have bendopnea because of similar reasons, that right ventricular filling pressures are raised. I do not believe it personally, but one should know that yes, it has been reported. How about orthopnea in a patient with PH? Normally, PND would rule out a pre-capillary hypertension. PND would mean there is post-capillary point problem. But orthopnea in PH happens later on in the course of disease, when the large pulmonary artery by mechanical compression of the bronchus can cause orthopnea. Very late PH patients also develop LV dysfunction, but that is a very rare thing and a part for the elite group. What are the clinical signs? I think the graveyard of examining is the apical impulse, whether it is RV type or LV type. And you keep on struggling, and you keep on wondering whether this is right or not. So PH patient can have LV type of effects if the PH is because of the hyperkinetic situation or because of LV volume overload, or RV type of effects if it is purely prekinetic and in heart failure. One would have cardiomegaly in IPH and ASDs, etc. Parasternal heave is a problem in physical examination so many times. It is not intuitive that patients with Eisenmenger syndrome do not have parasternal heave. Most of the patients with Eisenmenger syndrome, which means VST and PDA, do not have a parasternal heave. And parasternal heave actually should be divided into pressure type and volume type. Just as you divide LV apex into pressure and volume, that means heaving or hyperkinetic, parasternal heave should also give you similar information. If it is sustained, it is a pressure load. If it is hyperkinetic, it's a volume load. For example, ASD would give you hyperkinetic pH unless there is Eisenmenger. Alone TR can give you a hyperkinetic or a mixed parasternal heave. Now, there are errors in assessment of parasternal heave very often. And part of the reason is that one does not appreciate that heart moves back, RV moves back in systole. So when it moves back and it comes back, sometimes that routine movement is also appreciated as parasternal heave. And sometimes you find patient of AR, you say parasternal heave, and it turns out to have no pH. Because the AR patient, when the LV moves, the heart moves in, and that you misunderstood as parasternal heave. So make sure that when you say parasternal heave, it is actually heaving of the parasternum. Mitral regurgitation, can give you late parasternal heave. That is simple. What about P2? Palpable P2 is very important. Now here again, pulsatile pulmonary artery or faint pulsation in a thin person should not be taken as a palpable P2. When you say palpable P2, it should be really palpable second sound. And very often, we see that a thin chested wall, little bit of pulmonary artery pulsation is mistaken as palpable P2. Third, fourth heart sound, pulmonary artery, palpable pulmonary artery will be a good indicator of pH. Peripheral bruise in axilla and pleural effusions. We'll come to that a little later. Now, what about P2? P2, when you say loud P2, so simply loud P2, when it's compared to A2, it is loud. When it is louder than A2, we say it is loud P2. If it is heard at apex, certainly it is loud. If it is palpable, it is loud. And normally with the loud P2, the split becomes close. So in a patient of ASD, they had a wide fixed second sound. When they develop PH, second sound becomes closed and fixed. It is still fixed, but it is closed because the P2 has become closure. The hangout intervals have become smaller. Pulmonary impedance has worsened. So a closed split second sound is a sign of PH. When the RV dysfunction and RV failure develops, then again the P2 becomes wide. So a wide fixed second sound in a gross RV failure could also happen because of RV dysfunction, but that is uncommon. For all practical purposes, a nicely split second sound gives you some idea that pulmonary vascular disease is not too bad. When there is a real PAH, real PVD, most of the pulmonary second sound becomes close, and when it fuses, becomes single also. Constant ejection click is seen in PAH. In constant ejection click, if you see sometimes, you can give a reference that Perloff feels that there is inconstant ejection click in PAH also, and it could be true very rarely. For all practical purpose, PAH click is constant click. Should you find inconstant click, you should know the reference. TR, murmur. Now, systolic murmur of PH. Remember, when there is a dilated pulmonary artery, it does not give a murmur. Only grade 1 or faint murmur can occur from dilated pulmonary artery. If there is a lot of pulmonary regurgitation, then forward flow through pulmonary artery could also give grade 1 or grade 2 murmur, but not louder than that. And pulmonary regurgitation murmur can tell you whether pH is there or no. pH is not there. Can we say what is PA pressure from the loudness of second sound? Yes, you see the previous empirical observations are validated nowadays with hard science, and that is a good thing. We tend to see so many things on physical examination based on old books, but a lot of it, you will be surprised, a lot of it has been done with a lot of care, and most of it is right actually, except for the sensitivity specificity of maybe not very high. So should you find a loud second sound at the apex, the PA systolic pressure is actually usually more than 70. And the more and more wider it is heard, the higher pressures are there. Now, what is the exception to this rule? That you are hearing a P2 at the apex, but the PA pressures are not high. So such a thing happens in an ASD or anywhere where the RV makes the apex. So suppose you have a normotensive TR with the RV apex, you can still hear a P2 at the apex, which may not be loud. When do you say loud P2? When it is louder than A2. When it is a single second sound, then how do you say it is loud P2? If it is a single second sound, then you cannot claim that it is a P2. Neither you can say it is heard in the pulmonary area or aortic area. So there you have to go by, if it is louder than first second sound, then you say it is a loud second sound. Whether it is loud A2 or loud P2, you have to argue with the findings. By and large, there are not many causes of absent aortic sound. So if it is second single sound, aortic has to be present. P2 could be fused with it. So you have to rationalize accordingly. When you see a TR murmur, it is a very nice thing because you will be able to tell whether it is a hypertensive TR or a normotensive TR. You know, normotensive TR will be early systolic murmur, will be low pitched murmur, and it will be decrescendo murmur, whereas a hypertensive PR would be pensystolic loud with the CV waves. Now, early systolic TR murmur will automatically put you that PA pressures are normal. High PA pressure, high TR could mean PS may also be there. So it does not necessarily mean PH. If you rule out PS, then yes, it would mean PH. Can it produce pulsatile lever? how much pressure is needed to make a pulsatile lever. So should you find a pulsatile lever, you do not automatically say it is high pressure TR. Even abstain with severe TR can give you pulsatile lever. So it is computed that any PA pressure more than 30-35 can give you pulsatile lever. So pulsatility is a sign of quantum, not sign of a pressure. Can JVP tell you high pressure or low pressure? Probably not. What happens in pH in a JVP? If there is a TR, there is a V wave, but in an absence of TR, you can find a dominant A wave with a sign of RV non-compliance. When you say PR, pulmonary regurgitation murmur is very important for identifying PA pressure. And you can distinctly distinguish between high pressure PR and a low pressure PR. Low pressure PR are the types of PR you see in post-op tetralogy or absent pulmonary valve with a normal PA pressure. High pressure PR sounds like a AR murmur. It is high pitched, it is long duration, it starts with P2, and P2 is palpable in these cases. Low pressure PR is a low pitched murmur. It often confused with the mitral stenosis murmur. Sometimes it looks like a tricuspid floor rumble, but basically you have to realize that it starts after a gap from P2. So there is a small gap which is important for a low pressure TR, and it is a soft sound. So once you see low pressure TR and high pressure TR, you don't mistake. The problem comes that when you have a TR, a high pressure PR, and you have a rheumatic heart disease patient, you have to distinguish it from AR and PR. So that you have to see whether it's increasing with inspiration, whether there is a thrill. See, aortic regurgitation by and large does not give you thrill in the front of chest. AR gives thrill only when there is a VST associated with it by and large. So if there is a thrill, if there is a lower pitch murmur, if the murmur starts with P2 and if it increases on inspiration, then you can say it's a high pressure PR murmur. These are almost elementary, but I'm repeating it for the sake of somebody who may benefit from this. Now, can you have a pulmonary regurgitation murmur, but wide collapsing pulse pressure? That means peripheral signs of AR, but actually patient has no AR. He has only got pulmonary regurgitation. This is a common trap in the exam. So you have a patient of PDA, PH, PR, and his PR is masquerading as AR because of PDA. Although the murmur is only PR, which is a high pressure PR, sounds like AR, and peripheral signs are AR, but actually there is no AR. So one is to remember such traps and make it correct clinical decisions. Okay, so when you have a PH, you find there is PR murmur or TR murmur. Now, how do you distinguish whether there is a hyperkinetic pH or obstructive pH? By hyperkinetic pH, I mean pH is because of increased blood flow in the lungs, whereas obstructive pH is Eisenmenger pH with a normal blood flow or less blood flow. Obviously, second sound is loud in both, but there is evidence of a shunt. So there is a cardiomegaly. In ASD, there is a wide and fixed second sound. In VSD, there is a shunt murmur. So there is a murmur of VSD and a murmur of mitral flow murmur. So how do you quantitate a shunt? This is simple. In a VSD and a PDA, mitral flow murmur will make you shunt more than 2:1. In an ASD, a tricuspid flow murmur will say that there is a more than 2:1 shunt. So should you have evidence of a large shunt, mitral and tricuspid flow rumble, ASD outflow murmur, then you say there is a hyperkinetic pH if the patient is a loud P2. Other way around is the obstructive pH. So hyperkinetic pH would have a normal PVR. PVRI will be less than 3 or 4, and obstructive pH will have a high PVR, maybe 10, 15, 20, whatever have you. So when there is obstructive pH, the patient become cyanosed. So then, having thought of this in a very general way, let us see, for benefit of postgraduates, why my findings are wrong. Sometimes you say, okay, I knew all that you told me for last 10, 15 minutes, but I knew all that, but why my findings are wrong? It could be wrong because of misinterpretation, because you didn't train yourself. Just 1 week before exam, you started going to ward and started using stethoscope. And very often, anytime you put stethoscope between the two ribs, you find P2 wide and fixed because the chest rib is giving the trick. So one is lack of training. Other thing is you are given the diagnosis by your colleague so that you are not able to reason for yourself and you end up getting wrong findings, you're not synthesizing. We have been maintaining social distancing for too long from our patients, and maybe we are using screen more than the face, and we have got disuse, atrophy of physical findings. All this is okay. But what you are fixed in the exam is when your findings don't fit with your reasonings. So lack of application is a primary problem with the exam. That means you are not thinking hard enough. You have to think, if you say this versus that, so therefore it should be like that. So that is the only thing asked from you in terms of exam, that your findings should be fitting with your rationalization. And if you are honestly taking your own arguments, you generally don't go wrong. Yes, there are many times there are traps which are clear in retrospect that, oh, we thought this, but it turned out to be that. And sensitivity and specificity of these findings, which one should be able to argue. So examiners sometimes ask you why there is no RV-S3 if you think there is right heart failure. So S3 is not present all the time. So sensitivity specificity of S3 is 70% or something like that. So in hierarchy of reasoning, you must be able to reason it correctly. So patient has syncope, so that gets a higher order of reasoning than some other symptoms like that. So what I mean to say that all physical findings or history and story has to be looked at it in terms of a totality of picture, and everything should make sense with every other thing. And that is only asked from you. You can argue on your own finding. Most of the time, even examiners disagree in their findings. So that is not a problem. But you must rationalize correctly. And if you practice, you will be surprised how often you are right in picking up simple clinical auscultatory diagnosis. So at the end of each case, you are asked what is PVH, PH severity. And you know the classification of mild, moderate, severe PH. And you are supposed to make a guess. Now PVH, we don't find a direct evidence other than history of dyspnea or presence of third heart sound. PH, we back compute from PVH and a finding of loud P2. So suppose you have a mild PVH, so your PA pressures are, PA pulmonary wedge pressures are maybe 17, 18. Now diastolic pressure gradient minimum has to be there 5 or so. So mild PVH patient automatically will have mild PH patient. So you cannot diagnose mild PVH, no PH like that. So that kind of reasoning you must make clear in your own mind. There are two clinical cases which often comes in exam where you can tell the LA pressure exactly by JVP. Because in AST, the RA LA pressures are same. So in an AST patient, you know the LA pressure. In a CCP patient, RA and LA are within 5 millimeters of each other. So you know the LA pressure and you can compute according to PVH, PH, just by the way. So now we go to some of the physical findings that we see when we end up with a patient of PH. See, I am talking at leisure. Anytime you feel that it is getting late, you can probably tell me, or you can tell Dr. Mohit. So when we have a patient, although it is adults, Down syndrome. So question, can the Down syndrome patient have PH in absence of a heart disease? We know that heart disease and PH is very common in Down and they occur early. Without heart disease, do they have PH? Yes, very much because of several things, because the lungs are not well developed, because there is obstructive sleep apnea, because there are recurrent aspirations, because fundamentally the lung development is an issue. We don't often realize that rhesopathies like Noonan's and neurofibromatosis also rarely have PH. Patients with Williams syndrome can have PH, central PH, that means RV is facing high load, but because of bilateral pulmonary artery stenosis, periphery is not actually PH, or sometimes they can have PH also. Now, sarcoidosis patient, very rare, but because adult cardiology, we often see sarcoid. So tattoo have a sarcoid, cutaneous sarcoid, and such patient can have PH from many causes. Metabolic syndromes, Pickwick syndrome, high obesity, heart failures have PH. Varicose veins, deep venous thrombosis, past history of some accidents, PH. Sickle cell disease, venous ulcers, PH. Some of the hand-heart syndromes, Holt-Oram, like they have PH. So many syndromes would be having PH. So we notice the physical findings and patient at high altitude, native highlanders staying above 3000 meters, develop polycythemia, hypoxia, vasoconstriction, heart failure, some of them. So chronic mountain sickness. So all in all, we have to look at the patient in a holistic fashion and not only look into the, what is mitral stenosis or constrictive pericarditis. So we take a look of the general physical findings, and actually Braunwald has written one of the major problem of current cardiology is that cardiologists have stopped looking at other systems. We have become too over specialized, and that is one reason why we make clinical errors also. So patient might be having cirrhosis and signs of liver cell failure with PH, hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, usually pulmonary AV fistula, but sometimes PH also, upper airway obstructions, PH, differential cyanosis. What is the cause of differential cyanosis? PDA, PH. How often PDA, PH have no differential cyanosis? It is 20 to 30% of PDA, PH, right to left, will have no differential cyanosis. Why that happens? Either the right pulmonary, right subclavian is coming below the aorta, or the PVRI is so high that the blood, the desaturated blood is getting mixed with the aortic bloods, or their patient may have a VST also. So it is not always that there is a differential cyanosis in PDA, PH, but yes, if you find a differential cyanosis, diagnosis of PDA, PH is secure. Sclerodactyly PSS, patient can have PH. COPD patient, sometimes we don't see COPD on examination, we see it only in the X-ray. And we should never forget the lung disease as a cause of PH, and we will discuss that subsequently. It is surprising that continuous murmur on the lungs is really common with pulmonary thromboembolism, and it is a sign of thromboembolism if there is no congenital peripheral pulmonary stenosis. And I have seen patients like that where you have put a stethoscope on periphery, there is a continuous murmur, and on retrospect, patient is found to have thromboembolic PH. ECG is very briefly. ECG is not sensitive because, you know, right ventricle is small, left ventricle is normal. So by the time pH develops, right ventricle has to be really hypertrophied. So right ventricle hypertrophy is developed. It's a sign of developed pH, not a screening tool. Several things in right atrial hypertrophy, RVH. If there is a QR in RVH, the Q means suprasystemic pressure. Tall R in RVH means, tall R in V1 means severe RVH. Now patient have atrial fibrillation. In patient of atrial fibrillation, can we say that right atrium is enlarged? So how do we see right atrium enlargement in atrial fibrillation? Exam question. By presence of Q in V1, but with a small r and a tall R in V2. So ECG is important, right axis deviation, right ventricular hypertrophy. Another one with tall R in V1 and right axis. This one I have specifically brought for you from a very old book on myocardial infarction. Should you find yourself diagnosing inferior MI, that means Q in 3 and AVF, and enteroseptal MI simultaneously, Q in V1, V2, think of pulmonary embolism. This is from Goldman's inferior MI, Goldman's ECG on myocardial infarction. So Q in 3 AVF and Q also in V1, V2 should make you suspect pulmonary embolism. S1, Q3, T3 is very well known to all of you. So stress in the V1, V2. And sometimes what is forgotten is S, you know, the type C RVH. That means deep S in V1 to V6. So this is type C RVH, posterior loop, occasionally seen in COPD patients. This also suggests RVH. So much for ECG of RVH. What about X-rays? X-ray gives you a lot of information, but when you analyze the X-ray, you have to distinguish between PVH, pH, plethora, secondary cardiac effects, and the clues, etiology of pH if there are there in X-rays. So let us quickly see one by one. How do you distinguish vein from artery in an X-ray? Veins generally take course towards left atrium. Veins and arteries are generally equal ratio, fundamentally. Veins are little larger in the lower lobes, normally, and arteries will generally go towards the hilum. Veins will generally go towards the left atrium. So prominent veins in the lower lobes are signs of PVH. So constricted lower lobes and upper lobe higher, you know, mild PVH, then interstitial edema, moderate PVH, and severe PAH means dilated right pulmonary artery, more than 16 in men, more than 15 in women, and you know that. So pruning. What is pruning? Normally, pulmonary vessels are seen up to the 2 centimeter of the peripheral lung fields. If the pulmonary vessels stop beyond earlier than that, then we say pulmonary arteries are pruned. So there is a dilated central pulmonary artery and constricted peripheral pulmonary artery, or peripheral or first order branches are constricted. Now, can pruning occur in functional pH, or pruning is a sign of organic disease? Pruning is very much a part of functional pH also. So pruning by itself does not mean organic changes. So you could have PVH with the constricted lower lobes and dilated upper lobes, interstitial edemas and hilar haze and pulmonary edema, curly lines. You could have pH, dilated central pulmonary arteries, and peripheral pruning. So evidence of congenital heart disease by way of telltale evidence of pulmonary plethora. That means end-on vessels more than 5 in both lung fields would indicate a congenital heart disease, a left to right shunt. It is important because this telltale evidence can persist even when the pH comes. Like this patient previously had a large left to right shunt, now is on Eisenmenger, but the sign of telltale evidence of plethora is persisting. So dilated main pulmonary artery, dilated right pulmonary artery. In a child, you can compare them with the bronchus or with the trachea. So pulmonary artery is dilated in a child when it is larger than the trachea. And then right ventricle is seen on the lateral X-ray when it is causing more than 1/3 of the sternal, or whether it's touching more than 1/3. This one is little less emphasized, and I think it's a good sign. Suppose the hilar shadows in the lung. That means from hilum to hilum, it is more than 44% of internal thoracic diameter. It's a specific sign of pH, little less emphasized. This sign of right atrial enlargement is also less emphasized. See, people talk of right atrium enlarged when there's more than 2.5 this way and that way. The better sign is this, that right atrium is enlarged if the A is more than B. That means the right atrium, the distance from here to the SVC-RA junction is more than distance from SVC-RA junction to the upper arch of aorta. So this line is upper arch of aorta, this line is SVC-RA junction. If this distance is bigger than this distance, RA enlargement is suggested, and that is a better sign. Now what are these? These are typical spots. You can say Epstein's, and you can say PSTR. So you have peripherally black lung and very poor flow. That's simple. Now what is this? looks like peripheral black lung, but you see through the art, you can see dilated pulmonary artery. So this particular patient is severe PH. You can see the dilated PH on CT. See again, so sometimes you have to see through the heart, and this is actually PH, it's not PS. See this X-ray, dilated main pulmonary artery, but RP is pitted off. And you see the CT, the RP is pitted off because of a thromboembolic PH. So this is a poor man's CT showing a thromboembolic PH. If you are if you are open-minded, you can pick up like this. What is this? A large heart, and this patient is bilateral peripheral PH. So lungs are actually showing very less flow, and central pH on echo, TR is high velocity. It was actually misdiagnosed as pH till you realize that it was bilateral peripheral PS. This is another patient which shows large heart, PVH and pH. And so there are some signs of increased pulmonary blood flow, some end on vessels, some PVH also. So this was a combination of ASD with mitral stenosis. Patient of Lutembecher syndrome, a favorite exam case. So I would suggest that you read this article, British Heart Journal 1971. Professor Khalilullah will remember this. This is a beautiful article on Eisenmenger on Lutembecher syndrome, which will clarify a lot of thoughts and how to approach a Lutembecher. So highly recommended. What is this? PH. Now, cardiologist often doesn't pick up this. This is cystic fibrosis. So serious lung diseases, which we must not forget. Just one small point I missed, so I'll go back again. See this case, I just flipped through this. One thing of PVH which will create problem in exam also. Another cause of PVH which is not commonly understood by cardiologists is emphysema. COPD regularly causes upper lobe redistribution. It is physiology of the body to redirect the blood where it is not useful. In emphysema, regularly you find the upper lobe vessels are more than the lower lobe vessels. So it is a sign of emphysema, not PVH. So if you see flat diaphragm, otherwise COPD, and upper lobe prominent, it need not necessarily mean PVH. So we have to integrate pulmonary information from chest X-ray, information from everywhere else. Just two comments on echo, because all of you are very good in echo. So echo tricuspid regurgitation is easily obtainable, and it correlates with the RV systolic pressure in the absence of PS. So what is the difference between this TR and this TR? Both are severe PH patients, for example. So this is obviously a low dP by dt. So this is RV dysfunction with TR, because the rate of rise of, you can calculate dP by dt from this, and you have RV dysfunction. Now another question, when do you have pH with the RV velocity of 2 meters only? So you have RV saying 2 meters, but patient is pH. 2 to 4 into 2 is about what, 16, 18? When can then still mean pH? So that could still mean pH if the RA pressure is 30. So that to still translate to pH. But one more thing which is often forgotten is that when you have a free TR, suppose you have a very large free non-turbulent TR, then this Bernoulli theorem 4V square is just not applicable. For example, a large F-steam or a very severe florid unguarded tricuspid regurgitation, you cannot